Hello, everybody. This is Alex Swingle. I just wanted to give you a preview of what is to come on this glorious day. I have the opportunity to interview Sean Connors of Dragon House Publishing, I believe that's what it's called. And
Yeah, that's pretty close.
yeah, what is it exactly?
Dragon's Hoard Publishing.
Dragon's
I've,
Heart. Ah, son of a
I've noticed. I've noticed with you, Alex, you're very good at getting the first bit right. I do like that.
bitch. and and what I'm going to talk to him about is I'm going to ask him a series of questions, and they're going to be hard hitting. They're going to be severely personal and completely inappropriate, but he'll answer them to the best of his abilities.
Well, that's perfect of you. Thanks, Alex. And obviously, if you get my name wrong, I won't need to answer them, will I? So it's all good.
So yeah, without further ado, here is Sean Connors.
Thanks, Alex. You got my name right. That's really appreciated. I'm probably the most guilty person of getting people's names wrong, so don't worry about it.
All right.
Welcome. Thanks for inviting me to your show.
All right. No, thank you. All right. Well, considering I flubbed it the first time, well, why don't you give us a description of some of the stuff that you like to produce for for your company?
Well, the most recent things that we've been involved in is we're working currently for DCC, that's Dungeon Crawl Classics. We did a successful Indiegogo project last year, and we had close to 100 backers, and we're producing a main book that runs alongside the actual core book, which is called Angels, Demons, and Beings Between. And we're also producing a couple of adventures to go along with that supplement. Both of those are currently just being finished off. One of them is in pretty close to finishing stages, and the other one shouldn't be too far behind it. So we're looking somewhere around about end of February, maybe early March for both of those to be released. So it's quite exciting times ahead. And of course, we're building the RPG for the end of this year.
Oh, that's good news. Well, because I believe you've been doing some YouTube videos describing the process of making that game. Could you tell anything about that?
Yeah. The idea behind that is to bring the audience closer to what I do for a living. Really, it plays to my strengths. Really, and it gives me an opportunity to really react with people and genuinely take on board good suggestions. You know, when people make an honest, good call, I'm able to say, you know what, that's a brilliant idea. We'll try it out. You know, we'll see whether it works. And a number of really good suggestions from the community, from YouTube, have actually already been included into the rules that we're designing. So, and I will be talking about that in a future video in the Let's Build an RPG series.
Okay, that's good to hear there. So the first thing that I would like to ask you there, I'm not going to do any sound effects or ominous music of the punishing of how that's going to occur, but I'll go ahead and just start out here. Considering that you have gained ideas from what most people consider unconventional means, just asking people like, hey, what you want to put in this game, does it sound like a good
Yeah.
idea? What have been some of the most unconventional ideas you've done for an RPG, like playing it, host, running one, all that kind of stuff?
When you say the most unusual ideas, can you be a little bit more sort of specific on that, Alex? Sort of, are you saying in terms of running a game, unusual settings, that sort of thing, or
Well, it's more along the lines of it's meant to be vague for a reason, so that way you can just give out what you think at the moment was unconventional for you. It could be setting, it could be a character persona, maybe even items that you've like magical items you've given to players or you have someone gave to you.
well, I'm a huge fan of in role playing games. I really do like some of the old concepts for magic items. So I love things that are quite chaotic. So things like the deck of many things, a rod of wonder, anything that has a random table attached to it is a definite win-win for me. My players are very fearful of such things for obvious reasons, but I do enjoy those. Those give me the greatest amount of pleasure, and also it's exciting because you don't know what's going to happen, and you have to react to that as a GM, which is something I enjoy.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that one because like for me, one of my favorite magic items that I used was it was the axe of ill will. That's what I called it. And every time the person wielded it, it had a personality of its own. And whatever it felt like doing was what was going to happen. So like if the person swung with it, there was a chance where it would just swing back at the at the user. versus actually hitting the person. But when it did, it did quite a bit of damage.
Yes. Yeah. There's many. I mean, there's been many occasions over the years that we've tackled RPGs in quite unique ways, or at least I like to think so. I mean, I think one of my favourite beginnings to a campaign is something I did for Liber Fanatica 8, where the game starts off where the characters are just normal people doing an everyday job, and suddenly they're attacked, and the people that are attacking them are not mugs. They're actually really, really good. So the odds of the player surviving is slim. But if they do survive, they realise or uncover that they're not the only ones being hunted down, and they don't know for what reason. So the portraits, if you like, or the wanted posters they have are of the other player characters, and that's how the group forms. I really enjoyed that.
That's good. I like that. All right. So now, serious face question number 2.
Okay.
What is your favorite phrase spoken with an accent, and why?
This particular phrase I don't use an accent on, but it's one that a lot of players know me for. It's very simple, really. I always say something along the lines of, you believe that it's untrapped, or you perceive in the best of your ability that there's nothing wrong here. I tend to do it in a wavering voice. I look at them directly and say, as far as you're concerned, everything is okay, in quite a condescending tone. More often than not, that works quite well, actually, because they start second guessing themselves and not sure whether is it okay? Is it wrong? Is he telling us porky pies? What's going on with him? But that generally works for me. So that's normally the one I use.
Well, and plus you're already using an accent to begin with, so I think you're in the clear.
Yeah, well, you're probably right, actually. I mean, being British, we are accented, aren't we? I mean, I suppose you think we all live in thatched cottages, don't you? And all of us come from London. You're quite right. We're very wide boys. Yes.
No, like for me, one of the things that I just say, in my normal tone is, it was talk about it, and that's the phrase used where it's like, Japanese game shows, talk about it.
And I like that.
And the reason why is there was a group of from it was it was 2 radio hosts there for Sirius Satellite, that radio station that they do. And it was the show was called Talking Ball, and they talked about sports and stuff, and they came up with that phrase is they would just say an object like Neopet trading cards, and then followed by talk about it.
I like that. It's very good. Yeah, I like doing accents in games anyway. People know me as a GM who will put a lot of voices on. So I do enjoy doing those, but they just come at the heat of the moment. Those sort of strange entities just seem to appear from nowhere. I don't know how I do it sometimes. They just arrive, and then they become part of a game for a long period of time.
That's good. That's good. All right, now let's see here. How about this one? Are there any game genres you think aren't done well, and if so, how would you try to improve them?
I think that, in my view, every genre actually has at least one game that defines it very well. I can't think of any genre at all. I gave this a lot of thought. I can't think of any genre that hasn't got something that I think is a very good system attached to it. I mean, there are certainly some games that I do feel could have been done better, but as far as genre, every single one of them honestly has something that I would rate very highly. So if you're talking sci-fi, I think Traveller's an excellent system in sci-fi, and I know that there's a few people out there now been looking at Eclipse Phase and think that's very well done, and I wouldn't disagree with that. I like the Western Aces and Eights and Deadlands. I think are 2 cracking RPGs for that sort of genre. Again, in different ways they approach it, but equally very valid. Obviously, there are a multitude of very good fantasy games that exist. And then, of course, you can look at the indie market, and there are multiple games there. My Life with Master is a very good game, and I know that we've got some fans out there of Fiasco as well, and I can see the appeal to all those types of games. So I really can't say, for not trying to duck the question, there just isn't anything out there that hasn't got something that I can say, you know what, that's a really good game.
No, I really appreciate that kind of answer because at least it's honest. There are some times when somebody sees a work of art or just like a set of rule instructions where you just look at it and go like, I don't know how that can be trimmed down, how that could be twisted to do something interesting that I've never seen before or something like that.
Yeah, good point.
Okay. I was reading one of the listener questions because I can just cut this part out here.
Oh my God, you've got a list of readers' questions.
Yes,
That's not.
I actually got some
That's an
questions.
absolute nightmare. Okay, yeah, I'll do my best.
Okay. So one of the questions was he has two goofy ones, and I'll see about whether or not I'll keep these in here. Um,
Yeah, of course, no problem at all.
okay. Nathan Hawk wants to ask you, um, do you know you're not looking at the camera most of the time when you do your when you do your videos?
Yes, I do, and it's deliberate. I'll explain why, actually. It's a good question. I was hoping that what it will do is it will get people wondering why I'm not looking directly at the camera. It gets them hopefully into trying to look beyond. Because when you make eye contact with people, one of the interesting things on the medium of YouTube is if I stare straight down the middle, that's great. And that's true. I'm engaging that person. But if I just turn slightly, my opinion is what it seems to have done is it's promoting more comments. I seem to get more people following the videos for longer. And the only way I can really prove that is that I looked at the retention rate of every video since I've done it, and it's much higher. So I know it sounds a little odd. It's probably because I'm not making contact psychologically. People don't notice. Not everybody's noticed it. Only a couple of people have mentioned it. I think they're actually more focused on the content of the video. I don't know if I'm really right or wrong with this, but it's just a theory at the moment. But it seems to be holding water, Alex.
Okay, and the second part is, does this mean you don't love them anymore?
No, actually, no, it doesn't. I mean, I will. I've only done this for a short period of time, particularly when I'm talking about let's build an RPG, because that's generally where it's come in. No, I'll be going back to a traditional format of looking directly down the barrel of the gun, really, so to speak, in due course. But it's just to try and hold people's attention when the material is quite dry and it's tough. You know, you have to almost mentally go through it. I'm not saying any of the stuff we're producing is too difficult for people, but you could easily switch off because YouTube is a medium that if you get bored, it's easy to skip through.
Yeah, that is true. All right, and now his serious face question, because he said that one was a joke question, which gave a good answer, by the way. Um,
Thanks.
now this one here is okay. Seriously, ask him about the thought process, which led him to put so much work into the Let's Build an RPG series, about the risks and rewards, which ultimately led him to not only share the project but its details with essentially the entire internet before it's completed. He wants to know, about the thought behind, doing that whole thing of why you thought it was a good idea to do that, and like the if you were worried about any criticisms, things
Oh
of that
yeah, yeah,
nature.
yeah. It's an excellent question from Nathan. He's actually a really good contributor, and I had a very good chat with him, funny enough, a couple of nights ago on Skype. And I'll update people at a future video about that, depending on how it all goes. But he's fantastic at what he's doing, I've got to say. Yeah, it's a good question. There's lots of risks involved. Of course, there is. You're showing the audience a part of who you are behind the scenes. People have often heard me talk about my involvement in RPGs, and it was quite fascinating. I had a couple of people who, in the nicest way, quite rightly, I suppose, decided that they wanted to challenge us over what we do for a living. So I was quite happy to send them a variety of photos, sketches, documents going back 20 years of all the work and bits and pieces I've done. So there's a risk when you do something out in the open. There's always a risk because you're showing people what you're all about, and it is one of those moments where my belief is that this is the right way to go about it for two reasons. The first one is that by me opening to the audience, a YouTube audience that I've got to know over the last sort of few years, I'm showing them a part of myself a little deeper about who I am. And that does two things. One, it could mean that they don't like it, and that's perfectly understandable. And I've always said people should vote with their feet. And if you don't like something I'm doing or somebody else is doing, then I wouldn't even begin to worry if you switched off. That's your choice. That's what a viewer can do. My hope is, which is what's been happening, people enjoy it and they comment and they send emails and they get behind the project. And then this allows us a multiple opportunity to tackle an RPG. And I'll end it this way at the moment, which is to say this is, of course, once this RPG launches at the end of the year, we're in a pretty unique position because I can attach to the finished book the URL directory signs for any video DM wise, which can accompany the book because I've actually developed the RPG. So I can tackle my YouTube product and my love of RPGs all in one and make it a much more interesting RPG. So people can actually get insider information as the designer had wanted. They can see the DM's tips unfold, and I can go specifically into the theme and tone of this game at a later stage and give people that insight that just doesn't exist in a book.
Yeah, plus since you don't actually own, YouTube, the only way those videos are going to go down is if you delete them since, they've been around for so long, it's probably going to be really hard for them to give up on that station.
And it's quite interesting because the idea is, of course, you're looking to garnish support. There are loads of RPGs out there, of course there are, and why is mine any better than anybody else's? I mean, that argument is like a piece of string. No one really can answer that. All I can say, for really with any certainty, is what people are gaining here in this RPG development is 30 years worth of. I'm a gamer. Ultimately, I like to GM. I like people to have fun, and the only way I can express that is through an RPG, and it's about time I got behind. We should really rephrase that actually. Got in front with my head above the parapet, my own RPG, rather than support other people's work. It's time for me to put my stamp on something that I really believe in, and I think this is the one. And I think what this will do, I hope, is it will show people that we can combine the best of both worlds, the old and the new, and we can create something very unique, a role-playing game that people can actually say, you know what, that's really exciting. There are a lot of options for players. It is fun. It does have its own unique theme and tone. He's deliberately made sure that we can literally drop and pick up anything that we like. And he's listened to the audience from the beginning. He said, like has happened, half the audience was split. They wanted charisma in. So yeah, we'll have that as an optional, have that as an optional stat. We've listened to what people want. So ultimately, it isn't really just my game. It will be everybody's, hopefully. And I just like to think that it will be the launch of something pretty exciting.
All right, speaking of that, I wanted to ask you this one because it'll tie into it. G.K. Chesterton once wrote that books are a form of mind control. How much do you feel you demand of your readers when you write your games? How does your writing voice contribute to getting that message across?
I think that's a very good. I think that's an excellent analogy. I do believe that he's right because I've always said that RPGs, and this is whether you write them or not, an RPG run well is the best. A friend of mine said this, Adrian Kahn, and I'm quoting from him, but it's a great phrase, and I use it all the time. Um, a role-playing game done well is the best book you've ever read or the best film you've ever read. Seen, all rolled into one. And the reality, we all know that when you're reading a book or watching a film, there is a little bit of mind control in there because ultimately, if it's a good film, you're not going to switch off, and if it's a good book, you find it hard to put it down. And that's the same when you're writing. You want people to turn every page. The trick I've found to good writing is that, and I use the Shogun method, and I'll have to explain this. That the Shogun book is brilliant. That every single page leaves you, as you finish the page, on a knife edge. Every page you think, oh, I've got to find out what happens next. They do it so well that before you know it, you've read the entire book, and it's something like 600 pages long. It's an amazing piece of work just because of the way they keep putting you on a cliff edge. And you want that in your RPGs. You want that in your adventures. You want people to be excited. You want the GMs to say, you know what, normally I don't run a game that people write, but this occasion I'll do it because that's really good. I can adapt that to what I want to do. And that's what I believe in. So I do agree. That's a very, very good point. And, I do think there is a little bit of control in there, but not in a horrible way. It's just to get people excited and they'll make their own choices what they would like to use.
All right, so like I was asking before, like how much like do you try to grab a hold of people when you're trying to write your stuff?
A lot. The audience is king. It's critically important that it's a page turner. It's exciting. Even a dry set of rules has to make you want to know it more. Has to make you think, that is really unique. I never thought of that twist. Um, and surprising the audience all the time is critical, both as a writer and a GM. I call it shifting sands. You never quite let them know exactly what you want to do, and then just surprise them. And I can sort of show that right now because through playtest and some great suggestions, and one of the artists I've been using is a chap by David Fisher, who's helping with the RPG artwork. David's worked on Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and his artwork shone through the Angels, Demon, and Beings Between book greatly. And he suggested a character class, sorry, a character race that I'd never thought of ever before, and it was so brilliant. We've adopted it, and it's called the Fallen. And the idea behind it, again, this is a great shift in what the Outsiders is that when characters die, there is a chance they'll come back as one of the fallen, and that is fantastic. And that really added something that we hadn't thought of. Again, fits the theme and tone of the Outsiders world really well. There is that corruption there. There is that unusual, and it's exciting. And it's something that gets around some of the conventional problems that RPGs suffer from when it's quite dangerous.
All right, and like I was asking before there, how does your writing voice like help to get that across, to get that that feeling of that energy of excitement that you like to give?
Well, I think the way that I do it is because by nature I do suffer very badly from dyslexia, so I have to make sure that for myself I have to have people around me who I trust, who are very good, who can bring to life sometimes the written word where I sometimes fail, and I'm very careful at making sure that anything that is produced is of the highest quality. And I make sure that the one part I do well is I have a good visualizing skill. I think one of my unique talents, I think, if I have a talent, and I hope I have one, is that I'm able to visualize things really in fine detail long before I've said the words, and I try to portray that through the writing. It's not always easy, um, but I like to think it does come across. And I mean, ultimately, the audience is always king. They'll be the judge of anything we do, and they'll soon tell you if it's not good enough.
Okay. Yeah, because like one of the main reasons why I wanted to ask that, besides what you were saying previously, is like sometimes the theme and tone of what how someone writes, it attracts a certain audience to it, naturally, because some people like kung fu films, some people like spy movies.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from, and I think I probably didn't answer that particularly well, so I'll have another go at it. But I think the truth is that I understand when we talk about RPGs, I understand the player types. There are a distinct set of player types. So when you're writing, you always have a focus in mind about which type of player type something is going to appeal to. So some good examples are if we use the Outsiders game so far as we're creating it, as soon as we start putting in the three paths we're already catering for certain types of players, certain types that will enjoy that, whether it's because they enjoy a particular path, whether it's because they enjoy the tactical side, or whether it's because they enjoy the role playing and they can see that coming as the story is being built around what exactly is the Outsiders RPG and what exactly makes it different than anything else. So I think that's hopefully answered the question that you're looking for there, Alex.
Oh yeah, and that's why I definitely wanted to make this as live as possible in terms of the audio portion, so that way, in case what I was trying to get at didn't come across on the questions that I sent you previously.
Yeah, it was good. Good question, though.
All right, and so the final question that I have written up here is, what are some of the strange ways you've been inspired to write, GM, and play a character?
Um, For me, that's a really good question, and it's a tricky one to answer. But I'm going to do my very best to try and give a really decent answer to it. I think that the best way to be inspired as a GM is to take chances all the time, and as a writer. And that means that you've got to do things that are unconventional. That does mean that you're going to have to do something where you're not sure of the results. You don't know if the audience, because it's easy once you know your players, obviously, it's very easy to give them exactly what they want. So, taking a chance and shifting your position, shifting your sands on it, you find out very quickly whether you're able to successfully do things. Sometimes that's improvising, that's improv, as I've called it. Other times that's actually detailed writing, and you attempt to what you've written down, you attempt to deliver. Other occasions it's doing something really unusual, like reading a book. And then telling your players that you've read something that you really enjoyed and you're going to run it as an RPG, and at the end, you're not going to tell them what it is, but at the end, you're going to share the book with them, and then they can go away and see how close they got to the actual story within the book and where you changed things and how you were able to change it on that moment, that trying to make it as seamless as possible. So there's quite a few ways that you can actually challenge yourself as a GM and challenge yourself through the writing. I hope that makes sense.
All right, so give us like an example or two of one of the things that you use personally, like like an actual book, or like going outside and looking at the stars, and then like, oh, a character come across in my mind, stuff like that.
Yes, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, fantastic book, lots of pictures. It came long, long before all the various books um, regarding I've forgotten the name now. It's gone out of my head, but it came long before a lot of the modern classics, and it was a very big influence for me because I was able to write stories in around that. I called that the Non-Tonnier campaign, and the idea behind it was that the players were time travelers, and that an event had happened that had triggered a catastrophe in their own time. And to give you an example of that, it was very simple. that people were able to go back into the past from their time period. They couldn't go into the future, but they could go back into the past. And somebody had done this. It was illegal. It had to be done sanctioned for obvious reasons. Somebody had done it illegally, and in so doing, it was only a small thing that had gone wrong. The craft that they used to land back in the past had actually killed a dog. Now that doesn't sound like a huge ramification, but the dog was supposed to actually bark on that particular night, which would have woken up residents of a large block of flats and would have saved countless lives. Instead, loads of people died that shouldn't have died, and the ramifications for the future were very far-reaching. And that was all inspired from just reading that book.
All right, that's good. I like that. All right, and after that, I pretty much have nothing else, really to say to you. So the one thing I want to do leave is, are there any questions you want to, ask me or, ask anyone who's listening at this time?
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. Obviously, my view on YouTube has always been the same. The Outsiders channel's always stood for one thing. It's trying to create a sense of community. The community is growing rapidly now. People like yourself coming into it, which is fantastic. It's great that you're picking up the camera, doing videos, asking questions. This is what must happen, and it has to continue to grow in that way. We've got a lot of very good people out there producing some fantastic content. If I was to try and begin to name just a few of them, I'd be going on for ages. But it's really important that everybody tries their best as community members to, subscribe and get involved in as many videos as you can, because that's how the community will continue to grow. The more that we support each other's channels, get on the comments, put the thumbs up, let people know you're out there and behind them, the bigger the community will grow. We're seeing this year, we're seeing some big inroads. I mean, we're talking about people doing live streaming now. We're talking about people like myself producing RPGs for the community. There isn't an end to this, and it will grow from strength to strength. The great thing about YouTube, in my view, and one of its greatest strengths, and it's really important that we never lose sight of this, is that although we're individuals, we're all connected to the same piece of cloth. And we have to remember, no matter what we think of each other, and we do have natural people that we won't agree with. And I'll give you an example of this, because I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. For myself, I call this particular person my Sherlock. I'm his Moriarty, and that's emergent play. And we've had many great conversations outside of YouTube format, using methods like this with Skype or Google Plus, just as a hangout, where we know we don't agree with each other very much at all, but we respect each other greatly, and we totally understand each other's viewpoint, and we admire each other's viewpoint. I think I can honestly say that, because of the conversations we've had, and that's what I love. I love that, two people who can come together who don't actually share a lot of common ground. They love role playing, that's their passion, and they're both connected that way, but they're able to say to each other, look, I don't think that's quite right, and these are the reasons, and then the other person's able to give their reasons why they believe it to be so, and no malice, no intent, no hard feelings. That's the beautiful way that YouTube can work. Of course, there has been recent things within YouTube that have created small ripples, but they're small ripples. Things about elitism, things about people being more interested perhaps in subs and subscribers and all those sort of things. They're really unimportant. The most important thing is really comes down to finding an audience, saying what you want to say, and basically having the confidence and the belief that what you've got to add to the audience, no matter whether it's been said before, is valid, because ultimately it's your viewpoint, and people do want to hear those viewpoints. There is a million things still to be said in RPGs. Anybody that says there's nothing left to say really just doesn't get it. This is a hobby that has no end. There might be story, there are only, in my view, 7 stories or multiples of those 7 stories. But the truth is, it's not that there's only 7, it's how you say it. And that's the same with your YouTube audience. It's what you do. And I'm really pleased to see the community growing the way it has done. That's how I'd always hoped and visualized it would come together. And I know we've still got a long way to go, but the key is we've got to support each other and get behind things. And when projects come out, and I know there are a number of other RPG community members who are going to do things, and I hope we see a lot more of it. I want to see more Indiegogo and Kickstarter projects come up from the community on YouTube. I'll get behind those. The same as when I launch my RPG, I hope that other people say, you know what, I can build an RPG. Whether they launch one or not, it's not important. The fact that they can do it, and they may be inspired by some of the videos that people do, mean the world to me. And I want to leave you on one thing, Alex, if I may, which is this. I know from personal experiences over the years and what comes through every week, I honestly get loads of emails from people all over the world, a lot of people that don't want to comment on the videos because they're a bit more nervous than some. And I know how important it is and how inspired they can be through a video. If a video like Invisible Monkeys can literally save a young boy's life, because that's what I've been told from his father, it's turned him round, made him realise that he had far more to give than people could see, and that he was letting his own problems get him down. Something like that can change someone's life, and it's a meaningless, in the kindest possible way to myself, it's a meaningless video on YouTube. Then just think for a second how valuable anyone's content out there just could be, what a difference it could make. We're talking about people here in terms of gaming, but we really sometimes lose sight of how influential these videos can be and a far-reaching audience. It is more than just about RPGs. That's our love, that's our shared, if you want, passion. But it goes deeper than that. People look at these videos in different ways, and I think sometimes we forget that, and we must remember, stay true to yourself. And if you deliver what you believe in, ultimately an audience will follow you. When we started out, I was lucky to get a few people watching a video. Now I'm happy with the audience size I have. I'm not worried at all about it. And at some point in the future, probably in a year or two, I think once the RPG's launched and that, I'll always keep my videos on YouTube. I've always promised that, and I always will. But one thing I will do, and I will end on this when I apologise for taking a bit of time at the end to give this explanation. I want to say this, is that at some point what I will do is I will make sure that I start a brand new YouTube channel up, still devoted to RPGs, to actually find out my real audience size. Because although I've reached 1,600 members in the nicest way, a lot of that could be people who don't ever watch YouTube again. So I need to do that to find out the real value of the audience I do have. I probably think that about 500 or 600 people, probably about half the number maybe, still follow the videos. The other half I'm not sure about. They come back occasionally, but I get a lot more emails from other people. And the other thing as well is that I've definitely always thought about is there comes a point for everybody when you have to know when it's time to quit. And I know that there will come a point when I won't have any real value left in anything that I have to say. Not that I don't think I can talk for England. I think you've just seen that in this 10-minute piece at the end. But the reason I'm saying this is because it's very important. You've got to know when it's time to go. And I'm not saying that's anytime soon, but I'm prepared for that. I have the video specifically for that moment ready. And I will always leave my videos up, and I will always be watching what other people do. But my time as a YouTube contributor really will be determined over the next year. I think this RPG and various other projects now are starting to take up an awful lot of my time, to the degree where I'm finding it really difficult to put 3 or 4 videos out a week. I'm doing it, and I've got a plan to do that this year. But honestly, Alex, I am starting to find that it's quite a struggle, and I want to continue doing what I can do as long as I can. But once I reach a certain point, the one thing I've always known is when it's time to go.
And on that note, um,